Hello to everybody out there in YouTube land. It's your good buddy Philtastic Phil here, joined with my beautiful wife.
Hey.
Welcome back to the channel. It is late. It's 1 in the morning. We just got finished watching X-Men 97 episode 7. And we're recording because we want a fresh reaction that people are not going to see for a week, in theory. So I'm going to say right off the bat, I think this was the most fan servicey of the episodes so far. But
What?
most kind of fan service in it.
Fan service?
Right. There was a lot of cameos. There's a lot of teasers. But before we get into that, I know this is what everybody wants to know. Honey, what did you think?
Sucked. Thumbs down.
Why?
I was so checked out. I was very bored. I felt like it was very disorganized and it was all over the place. And it was very hard to follow.
Well, I think that you have to keep in mind that this is episode 7. I believe there's 10 in the series, so they're starting to get to, I guess, your act 3 of this big story. So we finally are starting to see the people behind everything. Spoilers, of course. What did you think of, let's see, what did you think of Bastion, the big reveal? I know that you didn't get too much information on him yet.
No, I didn't really know much about him at all. Like, I was like, okay, so what's the story? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was just like, all right, that's great.
But what did you think of the revelation that, okay, he's been keeping Magneto alive and depowered?
I didn't get the whole thing. I was like, all right, I'm just completely lost. I don't know if it's just me or if it's because I'm not familiar with the whole X-Men story or whatnot. I didn't really like the whole storyline.
Well, that's kind of the good thing about, I think, this and the MCU in general is that they're not following one particular story to a T. There's elements of a story. In this case, there's elements of a few different stories. I think this is a blending of E for Extinction, Hellfire Gala, and I guess a little bit of Operation Zero Tolerance, which was the story in the 90s where Bastion first appeared. Now, he's an interesting character. I did not like him at first in Operation Zero Tolerance, we'll talk about in the comics, but his subsequent appearances, he's one of those fewer characters who got better, I think, with appearances. It turned a lot of modern villains, I feel at least, they have kind of like a descending value, like, oh, this is really interesting, then they kind of trail off. Like Doomsday's an example, though I like him better, to be honest with you. Sticking with DC, the Batman Who Laughs is one who was creepy at the beginning, and then DC for a while was just, hey, we're going to put him in as many things as we can. But I digress. So when I was saying cameos, you had Strong Guy, who I pointed out to you. I didn't expect to see him. You had a whole lot of mutants on Genosha. I can't remember the fish guy's name. You saw a picture of Callisto and of Leech, who you saw back in episode 5. And of course, you see Captain America. You see General Ross mentioning the Hulk. What did you think of all the cameos? The ones that you knew of.
I was just like, I have a headache. There's too much going on. I don't like the storyline at all. I don't like X-Men as it is, and now I hate it. To the T. So
there was an episode in there that you really liked. I don't remember which one, but what...
That wasn't the first one?
I think it was the second one.
The second one, something like that.
So what is the difference between the two that you revile this so much?
Because the second one involved like a family life type of aspect. And this one, it kind of touched upon it with Cable, but it was very brief. So the rest of it was like all jumbled into several different stories, and I'm like, all right, there's so much to follow, and I don't really enjoy X-Men as it is. So I'm like, all right, I'm just checked out at this point.
See, I think though, well, let me ask you this: what did you think of? There was another family in here, the two other families here that they lightly touched on at the very beginning at Gambit's funeral. You see his, you don't know much about his background, but you saw his family from the Thieves Guild in New Orleans. They didn't talk. They were the other people there, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And you also saw Nightcrawler. And I told you in the past, I don't know if you remember this, that Nightcrawler and Rogue are kind of adopted siblings, basically.
Yeah.
What did you think of... I mean, keeping that in mind, too, I should say, before I go into this, I think that connection is what makes everything so more devastating when Rogue seemingly throws trash from the building.
Yeah.
And it's when he feels it that much more. He's like, hey, my sister just killed a guy, which is a big no-no for superheroes in general.
But then he comes back.
Well, of course, because he's a prime sentinel. He's what Bastion basically is.
So really, he's not really dead.
Of course. Well, you have to redeem her somehow. That's just kind of a writing mechanism. But getting back to Nightcrawler, I want to bring this up because we've discussed this before. You're familiar with Nightcrawler from the Dark Phoenix film and from the Apocalypse film. But I kept saying to you, every single time he was on, I was like, this really doesn't touch who Nightcrawler is. I think this is the closest representation.
Honestly,
wait, let me finish my thought. I think this is the closest representation to Nightcrawler that we've seen, even in the movies that you haven't seen.
I disagree. I felt I got more from Apocalypse than I did from this episode, to be honest with you.
But Apocalypse didn't scratch the surface on Nightcrawler. Did you know Nightcrawler, by the way, is religious? So religious, in fact, he is actually a priest.
I don't think the movie got into that, no.
No, the movie did not get into that because they kind of just had him there.
But see, why is that important information to really go by?
It's fleshing out the character. I mean, you have to understand that one of the...
But it doesn't play a role in it.
One of the attributes... Yes, it does. I'm explaining how. One of the attributes... I'm looking at you people. Tell me if I'm wrong. Hashtag Nightcrawler for entry into the Road to 1K giveaway. One of the important attributes about Nightcrawler is he's this... I don't want to say eternal optimist, but I think his faith carries himself in such a way where he's trying to find the good in people. Not to a fault, but that's why he gets along really with pretty much everyone on the team. And you saw an inkling of that in the funeral scene where he kept saying, Remy never saw himself as somebody who could be redeemed. And whether he realized it or not, he didn't need to be redeemed.
It doesn't make sense to me because his main character doesn't evolve anything in terms of him being a priest. He's a superhero.
I think you need to know more about Nightcrawler. I think that's what the answer is to that.
But it doesn't play a role in his day-to-day superheroism.
It does. His faith is a huge part. Again, I want to stress this. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm overlooking anything. Besides X-Men 97, the only thing you know Nightcrawler from is X-Men Apocalypse and X-Men Dark Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
What I've been trying to say to you...
No, that's not true.
Okay.
I also read a comic you lent to me with him in it.
Which one?
I don't remember. But I remember he was in that comic.
So, one individual comic?
I think so.
I don't know what it could be because he hasn't been...
That was like years ago.
Yeah, he was not a mainstay in the X-Men comics for a while. Spoiler for comics now, too. We're going across different spoilers. In the early 2010s, during Bastion's second appearance, basically second big storyline he was involved in, I forgot the name of it. It wasn't Curse of the Mutants, but it was around that time. Bastion actually killed Nightcrawler. He got better, as comic book characters do, but I think when he returned, he was regaled to what was considered to be like a third-tier X-Men comic, which I don't think is third tier, in my opinion. It was Astonishing X-Men, Marjorie Liu's run. I think she did some great things on that book, especially considering she wasn't really using a whole lot of A and B characters. But maybe it was during one of the Return of Wolverines or the Death of Wolverine. I can't imagine what comic you would have read with him in it, because you haven't read any X-Men comics. Am I correct in that?
Yeah.
Which ones?
I don't remember. You really think I'm going to remember that? Knowing how much I hate X-Men. Yeah, okay.
I think you just need more Nightcrawler. That's what I'm hearing.
It's funny how...
Again, tell me if you agree.
You're interested in X-Men and I'm not at all. Like, absolutely.
Different strokes for different folks. Okay, how about this? Let's say Marvel calls you up and says, Irene, we know you don't like X-Men.
No.
What is the next Marvel animation we should make? What are you going to say?
Miss Marvel. What?
no, I like Miss Marvel too. I
so
think.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you have any other comment? Oh, and as far as foreshadowing goes, I think that they are teasing a lot of things in here. There's a theory, and the only reason I give this credence now is because we've seen Apocalypse in the opening credits for a couple weeks now. Thinking back to when Madeline had her nightmare, you kind of saw a nightmare version of Gambit. There is a theory going around that Gambit is going to be resurrected by Apocalypse to serve as one of his horsemen, which happened in the comics. He turned into his Lord Death. I don't know that that's going to happen, but it's getting more and more plausible, at least in my opinion. I think OZT, by the way, does have to do with Orcus. I don't know quite yet. I think they're teasing a little bit of Dark Phoenix again, because you saw Jean was overwhelmed on Genosha, and the Dark Phoenix from the animated series is the best representation of the Dark Phoenix storyline that we've gotten. So there's a couple different interesting ways it could go, or they could just do something like whatever they want to do anyway.
I don't know how you're interested in this show. I really don't.
Well, is this your least favorite episode?
It's been my least favorite consecutively now, if you haven't noticed.
So each episode you see is worse than the one before.
Yes.
So okay.
Absolutely.
Then, except for the second one, which you liked.
It went uphill in the first and second episode, and then the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh went downhill. So
the last episode was better than this episode, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
I disagree.
Compared to this one, slightly better. Not much.
I disagree.
You disagree because you're biased.
Well, the only thing I liked about the last episode was that, and it didn't occur to me until afterwards, that Storm's costume was made of the owl demon adversary.
Yeah. The only part I would say I liked about this episode is that Cable.
You liked Cable's return?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're representing him well,
yeah.
I have to say.
That was my only favorite. What was your favorite?
I think that twist that Magneto is alive. And I'm kind of curious, is Bastion going to try to turn him into a Sentinel? How is he going to use him in his diabolical plans? Oh, what did you think of the fact this is the first time we've really kind of seen Wolverine more to the forefront in these episodes? I don't know if you've realized that they've kind of haven't used him as much. And I think that's by design, to let the other characters shine. What did you think of that?
I mean, that's one good thing about it, but again, it doesn't change my mindset.
Well, okay, last question I'll ask you for tonight. What did you think of Morph, a little bit of comedic action?
Who?
Morph.
I mean, it wasn't
I
really
thought that
comical.
Was hilarious, sipping this, you know, because you have this tension, like, oh, they're going to the, and he's just...
It was okay. It wasn't like, oh God, I have to rewatch it to laugh at this again.
No, it's not like that, but I thought it connected well. That's my point.
I think it missed the mark with me.
All right. Well, until next week, or when you are going to see it this week.
No, I can't wait.
Peace, love, and comics. Finished episode 8. A lot happened. A whole lot happened. And I think that there are a lot of hints at what's going to happen as well. Before we get into all that, honey, what are your thoughts?
I like this episode a lot better, I must say, than the other episodes. Well, except for the first one being the exception.
Why is that?
I just felt like it was a little bit more intriguing. It was a little bit more different. So yeah, I liked how they, I guess, portrayed everything.
Well, what was the highlight of the episode? Spoilers, of course, by the way.
I mean, you're the expert. You
No.
tell me.
In your opinion, like what was the big? Was there one particular scene that was like, oh, okay?
Not really.
What was your favorite scene? Why don't we say that?
I would say the ending.
With Xavier returning?
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I've been kind of thinking about this episode, one of the Instagram pages, well, there's been a couple actual theories out there, but one of the Instagram pages, I follow Josh's comics. I'll put something somewhere so you could find him if you want. Had posed a question today saying, "What is this building to something bigger?" Like they were saying, Onslaught. Are you familiar with Onslaught?
No, not at all.
Well, there's some elements in here. Onslaught happened before the story that this is based off of, Operation Zero Tolerance. Magneto had become supercharged, and just kind of like we saw, he did something to the magnetic poles of the Earth. But it led to a big confrontation between the X-Men and Magneto and his acolytes. And it resulted in Wolverine getting his metal torn out of him, almost dying, and Xavier seemingly shutting down Magneto's mind and putting him to a vegetative state for a while. And then about, if I remember right, maybe about 2 to 3 years later, it was revealed that part of Magneto's consciousness snuck its way into Xavier and formed like another personality that was Xavier's power and Magneto's evil, and it formed Onslaught, and he almost single-handedly killed all the X-Men. And he was responsible for basically all of Marvel's superheroes except for the X-Men and Spider-Man to be basically taken out of the picture for about a year. I don't think they're going that route. Maybe they'll put that as a teaser or whatnot. And that wasn't really what I was focusing on. Because, as I said, just like here, Magneto did shut down the magnetic poles. One thing that especially they touched on in the introduction is Bastion in the animated series here is a villain that we've seen already. I didn't pick up on this last week when he was having that discussion with Sinister. And he was saying, well, yeah, villains have been failing since '92. And Sinister said, hey, you were one of those villains. I don't know why it just went over my head. So a couple of other things that they're dropping, there's a lot of iterations to evolution and whatnot. So I think Bastion is somehow linked. If he isn't him directly, I think he's somehow actually linked to Apocalypse. Right around the same time too. Actually, I was going to go into Cable had a son who kind of became one of Apocalypse's followers. I don't think they're going to go that route. Yeah, I don't know. What did you pick up on any of those little hints either?
Somewhat. I wouldn't say all, but somewhat.
Yeah, now, one of the things that I actually stopped and showed you was the scene where Cable's explaining every time he's tried to go back to Genosha, he gets pulled back. There's that image of a branch with different timelines. It was very reminiscent of Loki. So I don't know if they're building that this is somehow an intersecting world.
I just don't know why Spider-Man was just inserted in.
I was going to touch on that. Towards the end, they're trying to show the enormity of.
I'm like, did I miss something?
Well, they're trying to show the enormity of what happened. So you saw little cameos you saw Spider-Man, Omega Red. I don't know if you know him.
But Spider-Man is not related to X-Men. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
They're all in the Marvel Universe. So Spider-Man is in New York. Like, again, they're trying to show that what Magneto did was all around the globe. So that's why you see Spider-Man sing it in New York City, which wasn't that far from where they were.
He was the only superhero besides the X-Men group.
No, well, you saw Spider-Man. You also saw the Silver Samurai. That you only know him from the Wolverine movie.
I was going to say who?
It was in Japan. You saw the big kind of silver-looking guy.
Okay.
And Omega Red he was a villain. They showed him in Russia, waking up from a tank, basically. And you did see Captain America, if you recall, in the prior episode.
Yeah, but I'm talking about this one.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of questions posed in this, and this is the first of first part of the three-part finale. So, if Magneto has basically shut down all the Sentinels, does that mean Bastion is also shut down? I feel like it wouldn't be that easy. And I'm wondering too, since Sinister is involved, one theory that has been floating around since Gambit was killed was that he was going to come back as one of Apocalypse's horsemen, which something similar to that happened in the comics. Maybe because Sinister is basically a mad doctor, maybe he's actually going to make a evil version of Gambit, like a Sentinel Gambit. They have a tight connection as well in the comics, their origin, I should say, or Gambit's origin. But yeah, I mean, some definite places. What did you think about the whole interplay between Nightcrawler and Wolverine? Was it not talking to Jean about family?
Yeah, I like that part.
I like that we finally saw Nightcrawler for the first time in an animated series.
That's not.
Unleash, like just with the swords.
I was gonna say
and this is really also the first time since we've seen Wolverine, fight since the first episode. Like the series, and this isn't a bad thing, has kind of put Wolverine in the back seat up until now. But yeah, I thought it was all around well done. One of the better episodes.
That's like you agree.
Yeah.
I thought you liked all the episodes.
I do like all the episodes. This again was one of the better ones, I have to say.
What was your favorite part
of this episode?
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to say the whole fight scene. I mean, you could tell there was a lot of research in this, and you could tell that the writer, who's no longer with Disney as of now, just had a lot of respect for the stories. They even tied in Magneto's Auschwitz experience. You saw the tattoos on his hand.
Yep.
So it's definitely pretty interesting. They snuck in a couple of good cameos there too. What's kind of weird is that I feel like they're tying it into the current Krakoan age of X-Men just a little bit. Like they're dipping their toes in it without going all the way in.
Which part was your least favorite?
I think the part... I felt like they told me too much information about Bastion too quickly. I still don't know who he is, but I felt like this episode you didn't need to know that there was something with his father going on. The whole part with the mother was, I think, a little extra too. Like, did we need to know all of this information right now?
I like that part, actually.
What's interesting, though, is again in here that Bastion is a mutant, or he was as a child.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, because they described it as an alien technovirus, if this is not so much the same virus like Cable has, but there's a bunch of characters in X-Men, and they did incorporate it into what is, in my opinion, one of the worst episodes of the first series, called the Phalanx, which is a techno-organic alien creature. So I don't know if maybe Bastion's a little bit of that too, but we're gonna tell soon. And we're doing these reviews. Well, we're doing them right after the episode airs, but we post them every 2 weeks, so there's only gonna be one more posted. After this, we're gonna watch next week, and then we'll post after that.
What? No more? Can we throw a party here?
Yeah, we'll see.
Farewell party?
Any final thoughts?
Thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching. Peace, love, and comics.